In my short 53 years, I have worked for a lot of people, and I can honestly say that I have never worked for anyone more direct, more intuitive, and with a higher sense of integrity and caring for the community that we work in. And it's a privilege to work for someone like that. Harry Jones, I think, is an icon in this community. He cares a lot about the people that we serve, and he cares a lot about you as employees. And I really thank him for being here today. We are going to have some note cards on the table. And I think they are there already, and we're going to ask you to write down your questions. And we're going to let you ask questions to Harry after he finishes talking. And there are no questions that are off limits. No questions whatsoever. So if you have a question, if you think your staff is going to have a question, please make a point of asking that question today, because we want to get that information back to our staff. And in transparency, the only way we can do it is to funnel that up, and you have to operate on behalf of your staff. So we're not going to look at you and say, Meg, why did you ask that question? We're going to say, Meg knows her staff is going to ask that question. And so please go ahead and make that question available. And I think what we'll do, we don't have a mic for everybody, but we'll kind of walk around and ask collect the questions. Nobody will know who asked the question. We'll collect them, and then we'll just read them off, and Harry has agreed to answer all of those. So please give him a warm welcome.
Thank you very much, Mary. It's my pleasure to be here, and I think that there are a lot of issues that are on your mind, reading the paper and about the school system today, county budget yesterday. Let me just start out by echoing what I've already heard Mary say, and that is to thank you for what you do on a daily basis. I took note of the statistics. I know the increasing demand that you're facing. I know the challenges that you face. I know the pressures that you're under. And it's a different time than we've ever been in. They call it a great recession for a reason. It's probably a great recession and not a depression, because the government bailed out banks about a year ago. But had they not done that, we'd have been in a lot worse situation than we're in right now. Before I talk about issues that might be of concern to you, let me just first say something. I hope that as members of and staff of the Department of Social Services, that the news coverage does not make you feel as if you are unwanted, as if you are incompetent, and that you're a bunch of people who don't know what you're doing. The message that I send to the community, the message that I send to the board, is that this department is one of the best departments that we have within Mecklenburg County. The stresses and strain that you are experiencing are significant, that you have seen significant uptick in the people who come to access your services, and I will say to you that that is not going to decline in the short term. Let me give you an example of why I don't think it's going to decline. Your service demand is going to increase. I heard an economist from North Carolina State at the Research Triangle Park, a meeting I went to last week, to define the situation this way. He said on a statewide basis, there's currently an 11.5% unemployment rate. And that his projection is that by the end of 2011, the unemployment rate in North Carolina would decline to 9.5%. That's December of 2011. So I wanted to know, well, what was the unemployment rate when this economic decline started, when the recession started back in 2007? And the unemployment rate in statewide basis was about 5%, just a little less than 5%. So 9.5% 2011 is still about twice of what it was in 2007. So I wanted to know then, when will we be back to 5%? And he said about 5 years. So the issue is that this recovery is going to be very protracted. It's going to take a while for it to work its way out. But think about those numbers just for a minute, 11.5% to 9.5% in 2 years. It will mean that there are people who, as the unemployment rate declines, that there will be people who are underemployed, people who have high skills, high education levels, who will take jobs probably at less pay than what they otherwise would have. So the underemployment rate will be significantly higher than the reported unemployment rate. Those people with high education levels and skills will then push out people who are lower educated and lower skill levels, will push them further down, and those who are lower skilled and lower educated will push out the unskilled and uneducated folks. And guess where that group is going to show up? That's why I say to you that the work that we do, that you do, is significant. So how are we going to address that? Just give you a little overview of where we are with the budget. For 2 consecutive years, I have done a budget for Mecklenburg County Commissioners, and I have said that due to economic times, it's not a good time for us to raise taxes. 2 years ago, I said it because gasoline prices were hovering around $3 a gallon. Price of food and commodities was spiking up. Citizens were having a tough time. And then all of a sudden, this time last year, we came to departments and we went to the board and we said, hey, people are not spending, sales taxes begin to decline, the numbers are not looking good. The economic times suggest that we can't raise taxes. Well, the theme is going to be the same this year. The prognostications and estimates that we have for revenue going forward does not look good. It's going to be the toughest budget that I've been involved with in Mecklenburg County, and I say in Mecklenburg County because it may not be as tough a budget as I dealt with as an assistant city manager in Dallas, Texas back in 1986 and 1987 or in that time frame. But it's going to be tough nonetheless. So the challenge that I have, recognizing that you have an increase in service demand, is to challenge you to figure out ways that we can be more responsive, the way that we can be more efficient. But also the challenge that I face is to make sure that we're getting funding and resources directed to the areas of the county that we have responsibility for, mandated and primary responsibility for. It might mean, and I'm going to be brutally honest with you today, it might mean that in one area of the Department of Social Services, we need to say that this is a service that is a nice-to-have service, and we no longer need to provide that service. Okay? But we know that in this service area over here, whatever it might be, that we need to take the resources that we had here and get them over there. And the commitment and challenge that we then will have is to make sure that we are giving those individuals an opportunity to compete or to retain employment with Mecklenburg County by transferring one skill or one service of the resources to make sure that we're shoring up those areas. We're going to start this budget. Let me tell you how I started this budget just the other day. We're going to have the retreat with the board next week. I gave them a couple of scenarios. And if you've been listening to the board meetings, or radio, you've been hearing me say this is going to be a no-growth budget, no-growth revenue budget, and then I kind of add on at best. I don't want people to be lulled to sleep that we're going to have the same amount of revenue for next year, but I gave them a scenario that said if all of our revenues, property taxes, sales taxes, intergovernmental transfers, deed stamps, state money, all stayed the same, we would still have a starting point of $16 million deficit. Let me tell you why. There are a couple things that contribute to it. North Carolina Treasurer's Office just recently changed the amount, the percentage that Mecklenburg County will have to pay towards your pension plan, the state retirement system. Currently, Mecklenburg County pays 4.8% towards it. You pay 6%. The county pays 4.8% towards your retirement plan, for your pension plan. Well, based upon an actuarial study, they felt that the annual contribution rate needed to be increased because they also have had a decline in investment income, okay? Primarily the factor that's contributed. So they said we need a 1.55% increase, so it goes from 4.8% that the county has to pay now to 6.35% on your behalf. That's a $4 million increase to Mecklenburg County. State of North Carolina in its budget last year said to us that we are no longer going to reimburse you for the state prisoners that you house in the Mecklenburg County Jail. $18 a day per prisoner. That's another $4 million hit. The county just decided to take on the responsibility for child support enforcement. Another $1.8 million hit. There's about a $760,000 cost associated with the annualization of the salaries for the last half of the employees who received market rate study, were part of the market rate study. There's about a $3.5 million increase for health benefit cost increases. So when you start adding all that up, you get some kind of idea of the things that even if we had the same revenue amount, of why we're going to have that increase, that deficit that we're going to face. And the way that we structured it, we said, that doesn't even include any increases for CMS or anybody else. Everybody else remains the same. It doesn't even include any increase in the base budget of DSS or the Sheriff's Office or any other department. We only added the expense that I just outlined. And so then we said, okay, what's the reality? The reality is property taxes might stay the same, sales taxes might stay the same based on how we budgeted, but there's some other revenues that we've lost to the tune of about 23.5. You do the math, yeah, 23.5 to 18, and somewhere we get, and then we adjust it down, interest investment income, and then we get a deficit somewhere in the neighborhood of $39, $40 million, whatever that number is. And then we did another scenario that gives us a deficit of about $60 million. So my point is, going into next year, it's going to be a very challenging year. And it's going to be a year where I'm going to have to come out, talk to employees in groups, talk to employees by the use of video, do more of this. I think Mary is exactly right. There are no dumb ideas. I want you to be brutally honest and brutally candid with us if you see opportunities for efficiency, if you see opportunities for us to do business in a different way, you need to let us know. I've said to the board that this is not a year where we're going to do more with less. It's going to be a year that we're going to do less with less. And I'm going to have to spend some time trying to define for the Board of County Commissioners and for this community what the new normal is. We will not be back to the days that we were just 2 years ago. We don't have the luxury. In the past, we've been very fortunate in this community because we've had rapid growth. We've had a heck of a lot of construction going on, from commercial construction to residential construction, and that's not occurring. And we've been spoiled in this community that we've relied upon a normal growth in the tax base, 3 to 4%, 3% growth in the tax base. we knew starting the year out that we were going to have 20, 25, $30 million of money that we didn't have to worry about. That the spigot was just flowing and that money was going to come in. That's all stopped. I'll give you a good example. A good barometer of how things have slowed down is that the Register of Deeds collects the deed stamps when you go out and purchase a home. And I don't remember what that percentage is, but there's a revenue that's derived from the sale of real estate transactions. In 2007, I think it was, we budgeted, took in $21 million of revenue in that one area. We estimate that we'll take in about $6 million this year. That gives you some indication of how things have slowed down. So I'm going to need all of you to put your best minds to work and to figure out how we can get through this. Everything is on the table. Everything is on the table. There may be some benefit reductions. There may have to be furloughs. There may have to be massive reorganizations in how we define the new normal. I don't come to frighten you. I come only to suggest to you that that's the new reality. And that's the new reality that we're facing as a community. And I would not be doing my job if I did not try to protect those services and programs that have the greatest impact in this community and that have the greatest need. See, sometimes I don't stop by. I just will ride to Valerie Woodison. I've been out to Billingsley. People just walk in the lobby, turn around and walk back out. I've been to the Center of Hope. I've been over to Spratt Street to the Crisis Assistance Ministry, and I see the faces of the people who are coming to us for assistance. I serve on the Critical Needs Response Fund. I see the applications that come in. I see the people who are first time. I see the demographic shifts in this community. You know, there are even some members of our board who have this stereotypical image of who they think is accessing the services. And when I go and look in those offices, I see people who represent every ethnicity and demographic in this community who are saying, I need the help of the Department of Social Services. I need the help of area mental health. So it's been a tough year. I would hope that you don't allow yourself to be maligned, I guess is the right word, or feel maligned because of the excessive publicity regarding the GivenTree and the voucher program. Just going back to that point, I think that we've done a reasonably good job of trying to manage the flow of information relative to those issues. And I think that the board back in December passed a resolution of understanding and support. And I think that meant a lot. It meant a lot to me, I know. I hope that it meant a lot to you. There are probably still some issues that will be addressed in the media regarding that program. But we'll answer any questions that are posed to us as forthrightly and honestly as we can. I want to move us to a point that we can make sure that we are collaborating with one another and doing the kind of deeds that need to be done in this community. Let me open it up for questions. And I want to underscore the fact there are no holds barred. Just ask me anything and be as candid as you want to be with me.
Raise your hand if you have a question. We'll go ahead and read that, and the next person has a question, raise your hand, I'll come to you. Over there.
Will the county adjust health care insurance costs to account for the increased health care costs related to obesity? Studies have shown that to do so, I can't read the rest of it, but you got the question.
Well, One of the issues that came up the other night is that a board member had asked that we report back on the study that we're doing to help with cost containment of our health insurance. And so the answer to that question is, I said earlier, that everything is on the table. And quite candidly, the issue of obesity was part of one aspect of the question that was asked by one of the county commissioners. To say that we will make those adjustments this year would be not necessarily a correct response, because I don't know if we would have the ability to make any changes in the plan relative to that particular issue this year. But I will say to you that it's something that is being studied.
Given the fiscal situation, has consideration been given to reassignment of staff to mandated positions that can draw down reimbursement instead of assignment to discretionary positions?
Repeat that.
Given the fiscal situation, has consideration been given to reassignment of staff to mandated positions that can draw down reimbursement instead of assignment to discretionary positions?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to be evasive. I know that that's one of the considerations that we've done with child support enforcement. But that's a question that I'm going to have to ask you as a director as to whether or not that's being done in our budget staff. But that's, I don't know the detailed response to that question.
Okay, let me answer that. I think there's a misunderstanding about how we draw down federal revenue, and there are some mandated responsibilities that we have. For example, we have to do public assistance programs. We have to make sure that people are determined eligible for food stamps, Medicaid. But that doesn't mean that those are the only required programs within DSS, or that those are the only ways that we draw down federal revenue. As I mentioned, there are community social workers in the Community Resource Division who are drawing down at-risk Medicaid dollars, which are federal dollars. That may not be a mandated position, but those are federal dollars that we can draw down to cover the cost of those positions. So I want to make sure that people understand there may be some historical misunderstanding that mandated positions are fully funded and discretionary positions are not, and that is not true. Okay.
Any other questions? And while she's getting over there, I'll just mention that we are going to have additional places to have questions outside of Mr. Jones later on today. So keep thinking about those questions. Those are very important to us.
Any thoughts on implementing an early retirement program?
Yes, one of the things I asked Chris Peete to look at yesterday was to look at ways that we could look to explore early retirement as an option for this coming year.
Any reason why we would do a furlough day versus a reduction in force?
Yeah, I don't like the idea of the furlough day, but I think as a manager that I have an obligation to try to determine a way that we will be able to respond to the recovery. A reduction in force, I lose the employee. But if I have a way to keep an employee when things begin to rebound, then we'll be better poised, I think, to respond to the recovery. So there are a lot of things that you've got to look at in dealing with this economic downturn. I mean, let me give you a good example of an area. That's why I made the point earlier that it's important that we get resources. I mean, it's penny wise and pound foolish for you to cut for the sake of cutting. Okay? I mean, it's penny wise and pound foolish. What you got to do is, if I know that you are going to be stressed and strained because you've got more people coming into your office for services, then I've got to get resources to you, whether it's people, technology, or whatever, so that you can do your job effectively. And even in an economic downturn, I may have to increase the level of funding for whatever area that is. But there are some areas where we will just have to cut because the revenue is not there. Let me give you a good example. I've told the board that one area of Mecklenburg County that they're going to get the biggest complaints will be in code enforcement, where we've had to lay off people who do the building trades enforcement, the plumbing inspectors, the electrical inspectors. They're all paid from fees that come in. But when the recovery begins to occur, we're not going to have the people available to even go out and do the inspections. We're not going to have the people to respond to developers who come in who want their plans reviewed. And so there'll be a lot of criticism there, but those people are having to be laid off because of how their positions are funded. And I've got to figure out a way in that particular area, how do we put ourselves in a position to respond to the recovery, while at the same time making sure that making sure that the sheriff and those other mandated services and programs are funded to a level that we can maintain and provide the services that we have in this community.
I've got two more questions. Anybody else with a question forever now, or hold your peace? We'll have other opportunities for you to ask questions. Are there opportunities to privatize some county services?
Yes, and the best way to answer that question, you've heard me say a couple of times that everything is on the table. And looking at privatization of services is something that we'll have to look at in whatever areas that we do that. There are some services that just we won't be able to privatize. In addition to privatization, the sale of assets. I would not be surprised that one thing that gets placed before the board would be that we consider the sale of county golf courses. I'm kind of mulling that over in the back of my mind right now, but the sale of assets is going to be something that we will have to do. The long and short of the response is there are just some things that we're just going to have to stop doing, and that's the only way that I know to respond to that question. Privatization is one element of one way to deliver services, but if you don't privatize a service, there may be some services that we just have to stop doing.
I just wanted to note that I had 3 questions on early retirement, just as,
Right.
as a tally. You mentioned that staff may be moved to different service areas. Have, quote, nice service areas been identified within DSS? And you want me to take a shot at that?
Well, not yet. I mean, I think we're not far enough into the budget development process to answer that question definitively. But I would think that if that given where we are, that would be a consideration for that department and all other county departments.
And if I could add to that, the work that we're going to do as a senior executive team next week is to look at what are the services that we provide and the outcome measures associated with them. What are the county commissioners' priorities? What are we trying to get to on the balanced scorecard and our 2015 vision? How does what we do help people in Mecklenburg County become more self-sufficient? So those are the kind of questions that we're going to be asking, not what's nice and what's not nice, but really, how does this directly relate to getting people to be self-sufficient and providing the core services in health and human services for our county? The last question I have is, why are we not moving forward with a mandatory bus pass program for Medicaid transportation versus pay for expensive cab rides? I can answer.
You might be able to answer that one for me.
We are, in fact, moving forward with that, and I appreciate the timeliness of the question. We met with CATS just last week to talk about how we can help them reduce their deficit. Their bus transportation is down, fares are down, and so they are not going to have as much money to give to us from the half-cent sales tax next year. And so we're working collaboratively with them to look at how we can move this forward. We're writing a proposal to the county manager. As you can imagine, this is going to be something that's the community is going to say, why are you putting all these old people on buses? And we're going to try to do this in a way that it helps people understand, instead of you getting an expensive cab ride twice a week, we can put you on a fixed route bus with a monthly bus pass, and you have a lot more flexibility about your travel schedule. Of course, we will continue to take those who are not eligible or able to ride a fixed route bus, but we're doing that with CATS. We think it will save them $1 million. We're doing that with Medicaid transportation overall, and we think that will save the state $2 million and send revenue to CATS because of those bus passes that will be paid by Medicaid. So we are writing that proposal to the county manager.
Yeah. Let me just say something about employee compensation. This year, we were not able to provide performance merit. And I quite candidly do not want to go 2 years in a row without doing something for employees. And it's going to be tough to do it, extremely tough to do it. Just so you will know that one of the things that we presented the other night is, and what I'm mulling around in my mind is, if we're not able to get back to pay for performance this year, is there an opportunity to provide county employees some one-time payment? And because I do not want us to get back to a point where there is an increased responsibility, as an example, for health care costs, and I don't have a way to try to keep that from resulting in a net that results in a loss of income to you. So that's in the back of my mind. The ability to do that is going to be difficult, but it's something that I have talked to the board about, and I'll talk to the board about it some more. It's going to be tough to do that. The other thing I was trying to remember all this stuff and not refer to the notes. One of the things that's really driving our cost has been the debt that we have incurred to build schools, to build parks, to build courthouses, and to build jails, to build greenways, to build libraries. And we cut back on some of that this year. We'll have to make some recommendations about maybe even some further cutbacks on building new facilities going forward. There's on the table, school system wants more money, obviously, to build new schools. There is a need, and I don't like it, but there is a need to have to start planning and building a new jail that we're going to need. It takes about 5 years to build a jail. Citizens of this community 2 years ago passed $250 million for a bond referendum for park and recreation. We have not sold any of those bonds yet, and we don't know if we're going to be able to sell any of those bonds this year going forward. I'm concerned that given our level of debt as a percentage of our operating budget, that our AAA may be at risk, which means that we may be downgraded on our credit report, so to speak, and that means that then the cost of borrowing is going to be a little bit greater, depending upon how much that we're downgraded, if in fact that occurs. And so there's just a confluence of events that are affecting our ability to be the same as we once were. I'm going to take a risk and talk about me. There was, on the employment compensation piece, I mean, I know that there was a lot of criticism that I got regarding my compensation this past year, especially the bonus. And I want to speak to that just for a moment. Nobody's brought it up here. My board pays me, and my salary and compensation is divided into a couple of areas. One, my base compensation. I receive some deferred compensation, and some other benefits. And when I went to the board, the compensation committee, the compensation committee looked at it and said, well, you're actually eligible for your bonus, about $5,000 more, but last year this is what you got. Employees this year did not get any increase, and we're going to keep your total compensation package the same. Had the board done what they had done the previous year, and you got to remember, this all came after July the 1st, the start of the fiscal year, but I was evaluated for the period ending June 30th. For the period ending June 30th, employees, through pay for performance, received on average a 4.2% increase. And my board said, we're not going to give you what the other employees received. We're going to keep you at the same level that you were last year. So that may not satisfy those who might be critical of what the board did, but that was the rationale for my compensation for this past year. I hope that answers the question. Anybody else got any other question about that you think I might have left off, and I'll respond to that question. If you don't want to raise your hand, write it down, and I'll respond to it.
Mr. Jones, I'm sure I speak for many in this room that say that you are really demonstrating the kind of leadership that we all need to step up with, and we really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to come answer these hard questions and to share with us.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you.
Let's show our appreciation.